Don Cherry, a Canadian cultural icon, was fired from Rogers Sportsnet, from Hockey Night in Canada, which is also technically a CBC property, but really it's more Rogers, which is one of the two major evil corporations that control our telecom industry. Now, there are a lot of reasons why Don Cherry was fired. Some of them are actually the content of what he said. You could also make the argument that they really wanted to get rid of Don Cherry because they were bogged down in terrible contracts on the hockey. They paid way over too much for the hockey contracts. They were getting rid of all their expensive personalities, like Bob McCowan was fired because he was just too expensive for them. They got rid of Nick Kyprios, who was an idiot anyway. So they've been dumping more of the expensive people. So this might have been a moment of convenience for Rogers. There's that potential thing too. But we have to get into, what did Don Cherry say? Now, Don Cherry is famous for ranting. And I've always said, Don Cherry wants you to do two things in life. Wear a poppy and respect the troops, and play hockey. These are the people Don Cherry likes. People who play hockey and people who wear the poppy, right? Who does he love? Canada and Canadians. What doesn't he like? People who disrespect veterans and the Russians. Silly commies. Now, Don Cherry was a bit of a curmudgeon, a bit of an old guy, but we really have to understand, is Don Cherry a racist? And the answer is going to be no. But he did say something that got him in trouble, and you could kind of understand why if we take a level head and look at it, okay? He said, you people, which is how he starts all his shows, right? If I were to start the show like Don Cherry, I'd say, you people, or you kids out there, this is how you do the politics. Look at this politician. Look at this Andrew Scheer. Look how good he looks. This Justin Trudeau, I don't like it. It's Don Cherry. We've all watched it. So he basically went off on not enough people wearing the poppy. He talked about he has friends in Mississauga, and he wasn't going to do these poppy drives anymore because in Mississauga, not enough people wearing the poppy. By the way, we're in Mississauga right now. I'll get to this later. Right, in downtown Toronto, Mississauga, and then he basically said, when he basically went off on immigrants who come to Canada but don't buy the poppy, right? And he said the land of milk and honey, you come here for the milk and honey, but then you don't want to respect the veterans, and it's hypocritical. Now, a lot of things can be true at once. So the reason why this is going to start an immediate culture war is because he said something that ultimately 90% of Canadians, if we put them in a room without media or cameras around, they agree with, right? Most Canadians agree with, you know what, people should spend a couple bucks to buy a poppy. The money goes to injured veterans. And, veterans, people did put their lives on the line to build the Canada that we love today. And yeah, if you come to our country, you should spend a few bucks on a poppy. And if you don't do that, if you're not spending money on a poppy, it's not a good sign. It's a bit hypocritical that you want to come here for the good, but you don't sort of acknowledge the sacrifice. Everyone kind of admits that. The problem is, we can also say 90% of Canadians can say, you know what, it's also not nice to call out immigrants for perceived not wearing the poppies on national television. That's not a nice thing to do. So Don Cherry essentially made the implicit statement that immigrants wear the poppy less than Canadians. You will never get a Canadian institution willing to do that polling research because they're cowards, which will come into effect later. And most people say, okay, yes, that we agree with the sentiment, right? People should be wearing the poppy, but, you also shouldn't call out specific subgroups for not wearing the poppy if you don't have any evidence of it. Now, if he's gotten a bunch of hearsay from a bunch of veterans in Mississauga saying, you know what, I'm trying to sell poppies, but, the immigrants are just not interested in poppies, maybe that's what he's going over. But again, he had no data, right? And there's a better way to say this, but Don Cherry is not known for his great phraseology these days. It's one of the reasons why he's become more entertaining in the last 10 years, because his rants have gotten louder, more passionate, but a little less coherent, so they're more fun. You don't really know where he's going to go. And this is the new fun of Coach's Quarter. Listen, you people out there, that's meant me. I mean, I remember when Don Cherry was yelling at me, I was part of the you people he hated, right? There was a time in hockey where Colton Orr would just get on the ice, and then in the second shift of the game, he'd just have to punch someone else in the face for no good reason, right? These stupid hockey fights that were planned, all right? I don't mind fighting in hockey, but what I did hate was the Colton Orr scripted fights where Colton Orr and George LaRocque are playing today, so they're just going to fight because. That's stupid, right? If someone takes a cheap shot at Austin Matthews, punch him in the face. But just to have Colton Orr punch someone in the face is silly. But Don Cherry said, you people out there who don't want Colton Orr, I remember when he went off and called us bad people. It's Don Cherry. Does he really hate me? Does that mean Don Cherry's anti-Semitic because I disagree with him on his views on whether or not Colton Orr is a viable NHL player in today's society? No. It's just one of the things Don Cherry does. And I've had this conversation with my family a lot about, we're pretty amazed that in today's society how Don Cherry is still on the air. It was a real testament to how great he was. Because let's be honest, go back in time 2 weeks ago, go in your time chamber, don't kill Hitler, just do this experiment I'm telling you, and ask someone, hey, if there were a Canadian personality to die next week, which Canadian would have the largest sort of state-covered state funeral, biggest turnout? And he'd probably say Don Cherry, right? If 2 weeks ago, if Don Cherry were to have died, he'd probably have the biggest funeral of anyone you can name in Canada, other than maybe a sitting prime minister in an assassination or whatever. It's a cultural icon. Now, the reason why Don Cherry survived so long is because he is a hockey bigot. And not a real bigot, a hockey bigot. And what I mean by this is Don Cherry has priorities of people he loves. Canadians who play hockey, Americans who play hockey, Europeans who play hockey, Russians who play hockey. And then non-hockey players don't matter. Right? He never liked the Russians, not a big fan of the Europeans. He's come around in recent years, but this was basically his hierarchy. Right? How often were you watching Coach's Corner and he goes off on a tangent on St. Louis wins the Stanley Cup because they had the most Canadians on their team? You need Canadians. Everyone needs more Canadians. You need more grit. And to be fair, Don Cherry was kind of right about you need Tom Wilson and Ryan Reeves on your team to be competitive. Okay? I thought we could analytics it and be like the 2002 Detroit Red Wings, where you're in 2008, where your fourth line is just Darren Hellman speeding Chris Draper. But you kind of need these guys. But here's what no one will talk about on Don Cherry, about how he was absolutely consistent to this. Don Cherry, you cannot prove is a racist or hates immigrants. Because here's the evidence I will give to the contrary. When P.K. Subban came into the league, he was the first, we'll say, big black superstar in hockey. I mean, Anson Carter had made a couple all-star games, but he was with the Sedins, and his dominance, never really a dominant player, lasted a couple years. P.K. Subban was the first, you will say, black superstar in the NHL. And a lot of media personalities were slagging P.K. Subban, in my view, unfairly, because they were calling him too flashy or whatever. And I thought this was just coded, he's black. And all those media personalities, all of them are basically licking Colin Kaepernick's boots. They all, oh, Colin Kaepernick, oh. They love him. But they would slag P.K. Subban. Don Cherry never did. Don Cherry loved P.K. Subban just like everyone else. P.K. Subban walk in the building, are going to be like, look how good he looks, kids, look how good he's dressed. This is the same thing he does. So look at the Brad Marchand there, look how good he looks. This is how all Coach's Corner starts. And P.K. Subban, he loved P.K. Subban. Why do he love P.K. Subban? Because he's Canadian, and he plays hockey, and he respects the troops. These are Don Cherry's only qualifications, right? Nazem Kadri, the first Muslim to play in the NHL. Don Cherry loved him. Why? Canadian, played hockey, respect the troops. Don Cherry, 100 out of 100. And there were a lot of reasons not to like Nazem Kadri, especially in the first half of his career. Okay, I'm a Leafs fan, and I can say this. Nazem Kadri, the first part of his career before Babcock got there, defensive mistakes, didn't understand the game, stupid penalties. Naz, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? Every game, why is Naz doing that? Why is he skating around? The fact that someone taught him how to play defense was a marvel to me. But for the first half of his career, there were a lot of reasons to hate Nazem Kadri. He did not know what was going on. He was out of position. He didn't understand the game. He was taking stupid penalties. There was a lot of reasons to dislike Nazem Kadri. Don Cherry always loved him, though. Why? I remember him when he played for the London Knights. He's a good old Canadian boy. He's Canadian, plays hockey. Didn't care that he was a Muslim brown person. Canadian, played hockey, respected the troops. It's all Don Cherry asks of anyone. It's all he asks. Right? And he was way more consistent than the other media figures. Yeah, he's a bit abrasive. Yeah, when Rob Ford became the mayor, he slagged Toronto City Council for being a bunch of pinko commies. Endeared him to my heart. That was great. Yeah, Don Cherry slagged Catherine McKenna for being a kook. Doesn't like Justin Trudeau. A man after my own heart. But again, these are Don Cherry's qualifications. It doesn't matter if you're black, white, Muslim, gay, Jewish. If you're Canadian, you play hockey, and you respect the troops, Don Cherry loves you. 100 out of 100 on the Don Cherry scale. Okay? That's all he asks of you. If you're a Russian, you don't like the troops, and you flop around like a soccer player, you suck. Don Cherry hates you. You could be white, you could be black. This is the Don Cherry scale. So to pretend that he all of a sudden hates immigrants, or he said you people, look at every Coach's Corner. 75% of Coach's Corner either starts with you people, or you kids out there, I was right, and then he's yelling at Ron Mclean, and it's great. So to make the case that he's bigoted is silly, but here's where we are in society. So the Toronto Star is just on the warpath to kill him. So here's the first, this basically sums up Toronto Star. Don Cherry's firing is a good day for hockey and Canada. Bullshit. This has been a terrible week for Canada. We lost an icon, right? So here's another one. Let's bring up my girl Rosemary Barden, retweeting this Bruce Arthur and Rosemary Barden, the ringleaders of this. Remember, Rosemary Barden didn't say a single thing when Blackface Trudeau came out. She says, this is really well written and argued. And Bruce Arthur's thesis of his, another Toronto Star columnist, Don Cherry should go, but then he should have gone a long time ago, right? We should have never had him, right? How dare someone have different opinions than Bruce Arthur and Rosemary Barden? So here's this public, here's Rosemary Button isn't a journalist, but she plays one on TV, so you might be confused, right? Now, to be fair to Toronto Star, there was one article that showed a modicum of perspective. So there's like 20 terrible articles. Then there's this one, which I actually think is kind of well reasoned. Making Don Cherry a martyr for the ignorant is a bad idea. The title is not as bad as the article. The guy actually defends it and points out all the great charitable work Don Cherry did. Like when Don Cherry would wear silly, colorful suits, he would auction those off because they became a thing. Like the reason he dressed around like a fool is because his son had a terrible kidney disease and his daughter had to give his son a kidney. So all those suits that got auctioned off for charity, right? And also immigrants get kidney disease too. So this guy lived a very Maimonic life. Maimonides would have loved this guy because he did a lot of charity and never really talked about it openly. Okay, so that's where we are on that. Now, there's a lot of things that is a problem here, and I want to talk about cowardice for a second. Now, if Don Cherry, God bless Don Cherry, because Don Cherry didn't apologize. At least Don Cherry didn't go down like a little pussy. I'm sorry, nah. Don Cherry at least stood his ground and he played the orchestra as the Titanic sank. He went down like a man. You know who didn't go down like a man? Ron Mclean. Ron Mclean went out like a little bitch. So here's what Ron Mclean is. Here's him tweeting an apology. I want to apologize for Don Cherry. Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, Don, people's feelings were hurt, and I'm apologizing. Blah 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 blah. You know what apologies get you? This. This is what Ron Mclean gets for bowing down to the outrage mob. Here we go. Let's show the thing. Ron Mclean was Don Cherry's enabler. Toronto Star, right? This is why you don't apologize to the mob. When you say, oh, I'm sorry, mob. Oh, please, go after Don Cherry, not me. Well, you sat next to Don Cherry for years. You nodded your head when he went on and on. Of course you nod your head when Don Cherry's yelling, because no one knows what Don Cherry's ever yelling about until the end. He starts at the beginning, then he goes to the end, then he's in the middle, then he's talking about how good David Pasternak looks, then he's talking about something, then he's talking about the time in 1984 where he was right about something, then he gets back to the conclusion, you're like, whew, at least he didn't get fired this week, right? And Ron McLean's job was just to sit there and look nervous. 1 minute left on. Shut up, Ron, I should have more time. You kids out there, good times. And then Sportsnet fired him. Here's what Sportsnet gets for firing him. Right? You appease the mob. Oh, look, we're so nice. Look at us. We got rid of the evil racist Don Cherry. So show this tweet. You don't get any better. Right? Here's a blue verified checkmark journalist. Coach's Corner is taped Saturdays because its regional games don't finish the first period at the same time. It actually ran 3 times. Leafs Flyers, Kings Habs, Sens Hurricanes. That means Sportsnet taped it, heard what he said, and let it run 3 times. Sportsnet, how could you? Right? You give in to the mob, they don't ever stop. Don't appease terrorists. And these people are intellectual terrorists. That's one of the best things Gad said ever said. These are intellectual terrorists, these people. Just an angry, hate-filled mob.